these visuals? People running after this US Air Force plane. Some even climbed onto the side of the moving plane. There was only desperation to leave the country. It was August 2021. The Taliban seized control of Afghanistan, ousting the US-backed government. The then President Ashraf Ghani fled the country. Fast forward to 2024. It has been 3 years since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan. Taliban calls their government the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This military parade marks the 3rd anniversary of Taliban's return to power. Before we move ahead, let's understand who exactly are the Taliban. Well, the Taliban is a militant Islamist group that originated in the early 1990s in southern Afghanistan. The name Taliban means students in Pashto. They promised to bring order and stability to Afghanistan after the Soviet withdrawal. They quickly gained support, seized control of Kabul in 1996, and established a harsh regime that enforced strict Islamic law. They remained in power until 2001, when they were ousted by a US-led coalition. After 2 decades, they returned to power in 2021, following the US and NATO withdrawal. So how is Afghanistan doing under the Taliban? Well, Afghanistan is in dire straits. Its economy is struggling, with foreign aid accounting for 30% of its GDP. Sanctions and frozen assets have isolated the country, leaving millions in poverty and hunger. In 2023, the World Food Programme reported an alarming rise in malnutrition rates, with nearly 1 in 4 Afghans not knowing where their next meal will come from. Unemployment rates are high, and the World Bank forecasts no economic growth for the next 3 years. The Taliban lacks the means to boost the economy. The central bank can't print money because it's printed abroad, and Islamic law prohibits interest, so banks are not lending. Plus, because the Taliban is not recognized as a legitimate government, they can't borrow money or access global banking. And here's the most disturbing part. The Taliban has imposed harsh restrictions on women, denying them basic rights. They have banned girls from secondary schools, universities, and even prohibited them from taking university entrance exams. Girls are banned from education beyond the 6th grade, making Afghanistan the only country in the world with such a restriction. As a result, around 80% of school-aged girls are out of school. Women face severe restrictions. They are forced to wear full-body burqas. Women can't go to public spaces like parks, gyms, and sports clubs. Now see this United Nations report. The Taliban are detaining women and girls for violating their strict dress code, which they refer to as bad hijab. Women need a male guardian to travel and are even banned from working for NGOs. The Taliban has also shut down beauty salons, calling eyebrow shaping un-Islamic. Afghanistan now has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence globally. The woman you see on screen is Sahara Karimi. She fled Kabul after the Taliban took over in 2021. Listen to what she says.
I want to use this opportunity to ask international community that do not support that dirty, shameful narrative about Afghanistan and stand on the right side of the history and support people of Afghanistan, support women of Afghanistan, not with humanitarian aids and give them piece of bread or piece of chocolate, but help them to get their freedom back so they will work and earn money to buy that piece of bread and chocolate for themselves.
The Taliban has brought back brutal physical punishments. Public floggings and executions are now part of their rule. The supreme leader, Mullah Hibatullah Akhundzada, has announced plans to revive an even more horrific practice, stoning women to death for adultery. In November 2022, they publicly lashed 19 people, and this was just the beginning. In June 2023, they had publicly flogged at least 60 people, including over a dozen women. The Taliban also conducted public executions, including double executions in February of this year at a stadium in Ghazni city. Migration issues add another layer of difficulty. Thousands of Afghans who had called Pakistan home for decades were suddenly forced to return to Afghanistan. In fact, since September 2023, over 665,000 Afghans have arrived in Afghanistan from Pakistan, straining the already overwhelmed humanitarian systems. Let's put the political unrest and economic struggles aside for a moment. Even nature wasn't kind enough with Afghanistan. In recent years, the country has experienced devastating earthquakes and floods, killing thousands of people. The Taliban struggle to respond to these disasters, exposing Afghanistan's resource limits. And what can be more pathetic than these mass graves? The Taliban claims to have brought stability and security to Afghanistan, but the reality on the ground tells a different story. Just days after the Taliban took over Afghanistan, Islamic State groups, suicide bombers and gunmen killed over 170 Afghans at Kabul airport. Since then, there have been more attacks, including a suicide bombing at an education center in a Shiite neighborhood of Kabul that killed dozens. The Taliban are also suspected of harboring terrorists. This report of the United States killing Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri in a drone strike on a safe house in Kabul further validates the accusation. Reports suggest that Al-Qaeda has set up training camps across the country. While the Taliban is working to boost tourism, see what's happening with the tourists in the country. 3 Spanish tourists were killed in an attack by gunmen in Afghanistan's central Bamiyan province. No country in the world formally recognizes the Taliban-led government in Afghanistan, but some countries operate embassies in Kabul. Taliban control Afghan missions in some 14 nations in the region, including China, Russia, Turkmenistan, Iran, the UAE, and several Central Asian countries. China has a deep interest in Afghanistan. Beijing signed major business deals with the Taliban in 2023, including a 25-year oil extraction agreement. But the Taliban does not recognize diplomatic missions set up by the previous government, which is causing problems for Afghans living abroad. Without access to consular services, they may face financial and legal issues, making their lives even more challenging. Afghanistan's story is one of shattered hopes and dreams. The world watches as Afghanistan's future hangs in the balance.